Hey Astro Kids, and welcome back. This is part 2 of your 2020 horoscope. If you have not seen part 1, I have the link for that in the live chat. I have it in the comments and in the description, so go and check that out. Also, if you are interested, I'm doing a Black Friday special where you can have a 15-minute reading, tarot card or oracle card reading for $5. Also, don't forget to contact me if you are looking for a yearly report for 2020. And if you are interested, we are doing a 1,000 subscriber special. So go ahead and comment down below, loyal fan, if that is something that you're interested in. And we're going to get right into this. So we left off on July 5th with the prenumbral lunar eclipse. And now we're picking back up on July 7th. We have a Ceres retrograde. And again, I normally don't talk about the...
I found this on the web for his retrograde. And yet I normally don't talk about.
And Siri heard me say Ceres. So I normally don't talk about the asteroids that much, but there's something significant about these retrogrades with the asteroids in 2020. And so when we look at Ceres retrograde, it is going to retrograde in Pisces at 12 degrees, and there's something about this asteroid in particular that is about nurturing and motherhood and agriculture and the abundance and of what really nurtures us. And there's something to say about that as we are moving into this space of 2020 of, are you really doing what has true substance and what is truly nurturing and fulfilling to you in your life? Is this really nurturing? Is this really satisfying to you in your life? And it's in Pisces where we do have this very magical, spiritual, divine connection. And so there's something about this where, again, sort of coming off of that Cancer North Node, this reminder of, are you really doing what is nurturing, what is fulfilling, what is of the highest, most spiritual, emotional connection? And so that doesn't go away, even though we're in this space now of this Gemini North Node. There's still this reminder that is saying, okay, are we doing what is of the highest connection to our true authentic selves? Because if we're not, then this Gemini North Node is not here to open up doorways for us. It's here for us to learn. And so there's something about this where if you are doing something that is detrimental to your soul, if you are going back into these old cycles, and we talked about this with this Saturn retrograde going back into Capricorn, of, are you going to go back to these old patterns, or are you going to move into a space that is truly nurturing and fulfilling so that we can start opening up these doorways for new and better experiences in our lives? And that takes us to July 11th, where Chiron goes retrograde in Aries at 9 degrees. And so we're going through this Chiron retrograde in Aries currently right now in 2019, and it will come to an end December 11th. So we're going to see this play out again, and there's something about this, again, I had talked about in part 1 about how Chiron and Aries has to do with the death of the ego. Now, with Chiron retrograde in Aries, this is going to kind of push your buttons a little bit. This is kind of going to trigger you and really pick apart at these wounds and these attachments that we have with the ego. So if you are easily being wounded, if you are easily getting your feelings hurt during this Chiron retrograde, this is really a good time to look at those wounds. Chiron is the wounded healer. And so it's showing you these areas which you are wounded, and it's an Aries, so it's involving the self, the ego, the identity. So looking at these attachments to what you identify with, and really reviewing and going over these things and sort of asking yourself, okay, is this truly in line with who I am, or is this just coming from the ego? Is this an ego attachment? And so with that Chiron in retrograde, that will really be a time to review and reflect over these wounds of identity attachment, and really going over and seeing, okay, is this truly an attachment that is soul related, or is this ego? And that takes us to July 12th, the next day, where we see Mercury come direct in Cancer at 5 degrees. So there is something about how this Chiron retrograde is the day before Mercury coming direct. And so the Mercury retrograde and the Chiron retrograde sort of play roles with each other, because we do see that in Cancer, Mercury is very sensitive. There's something about getting hurt emotionally by attachment to words, to conversation. So are you saying something that is coming from an emotional place, or are you feeling as though you're being attacked by other people as they are responding emotionally? So there's something to say about that. And if there are any sort of scenarios with that, then that is where that Mercury retrograde and that Chiron retrograde together is kind of showing you, okay, this is where the wounds are. This is where you have to really look at these areas, because there's something to say about how when it comes to these ego-related wounds, that you are allowing this to happen to you by tapping into this energy, by tapping into the emotions of others, by tapping into these conversations and these scenarios. And so there's something to say here about detaching yourself from these situations and not responding emotionally, but just allowing whatever emotional waves to flow through you, and to really take your time to make a good judgment call about how to handle the situation. So this is an area where you might feel a little bit sensitive, you might feel a little bit attacked, you might feel a little bit emotional. But again, if you just kind of let those emotional waves sort of flow through you and really allow yourself to process everything. Don't make decisions based on your emotions. Now, with Mercury coming direct, though, there is something to say about coming out of this review period of going over what is the highest emotional divine connection. Okay, what are you emotionally connected to? There's something about Cancer that is very mother-like and sentimental about what are you connecting to, what do you see value in, what are you emotionally attached to. And so we come out of that review period, and we're still sort of in this Mercury and Cancer phase of communication being slightly more emotionally charged, being slightly more sensitive. You may see people on the extremes of being very aggressive and emotionally charged, and then you might see people on the other extremes of being super sensitive, super compassionate with this Mercury and Cancer. And on July 16th, Saturn is in quincunx with the North Node. And this is sort of an odd position. This quincunx is sort of an odd angle, an odd aspect. And there is something about how Saturn is in Capricorn, very strong in Capricorn. The North Node is also very strong in Gemini. A lot of people aren't aware that the North Node is very, very strong in Gemini. And this is because the North Node is about these lessons, is about what is destined, is about the doorway to where we are going. And Gemini is dealing with that curiosity and that open-mindedness to take on those new experiences and the new information. And so, yes, the North Node is very strong here in Gemini. And so there's something odd about this quincunx, because we see this Capricorn energy and this Gemini energy that don't really quite match up. There's something to say about how Capricorn and Gemini are traditionally in conjunct. And so these energies are kind of odd, they're kind of off, they kind of don't really get each other, right? Gemini is trying to learn and experience and open doorways, and Capricorn is trying to be serious and mature and work its hardest to get to achievements. So there's sort of this weird offset of energy here. And really what this is showing us is, yes, we have these doorways, these opportunities of moving into what is new and what is fresh, but we still have work to be done. We still have to get through the hard, challenging situations. And this is something that comes up a lot in 2020. We see this, that yes, 2020 is a number 2 year in numerology, which is the master builder. And so there's something to say about how your path to destiny is about you putting in the work, about you putting in the effort and building and working up to this, climbing the ladder, right? This magical moment of what is truly possible in these miracles is really a 2019 moment of showing us where we're going, of what is possible. But now that we're in 2020, this is home base of having to work and apply these things to make these things happen. And so there's something to say about 2019 being the number 3 year of showing you these beautiful opportunities. And so now it kind of brings us to a point of, are we deciding to take on and bring in these opportunities into our life? And if that's what we're doing, then what is the work, what is the effort, what are the goals that we're going to do to make this thing happen? And on September 5th, Uranus is at a semi-square with the North Node. So we have Uranus still in Taurus at 10 degrees, making the semi-square over to the North Node at 25 in Gemini. And so this is definitely highlighting what we were just talking about. It does show us there's something about Taurus where Taurus knows, okay, we have to do the work to make this beautiful life happen. And there is something about Taurus where it has to be the most beautiful life. It has to be of the highest value. It has to be the most authentic. And remember that with this Uranus in Taurus, this is on a collective level. This is looking, okay, how can we be our most authentic, true selves across the board? And there's something about this that is elevating us, taking us to a higher level in our lives. And so with this, it's making this semi-square over to the North Node, saying, okay, we need to do what is authentic. We need to do what is of the highest value. No more going back. No more doing things that are of a lower value. No more settling for what is not resonating with you on the highest possible level. And so there is something to say about applying that is activating this open doorway of this North Node in Gemini. Now on September 5th, later on, we see Pallas Athena come direct, and we talked about that in the last video about how Pallas Athena is about this wisdom and this applied understanding, especially in Capricorn, where it's more mature, more wise, more grounded, more practical about what do you really know and understand in your life. Where does the wisdom and the advice need to be applied to your life? And so it comes direct, where we come out of this review period of checking off the boxes of what we need to know and understand in our lives. And on September 9th, now remember that 2019 was an off year. We didn't see Mars retrograde. But here on September 9th, Mars stations retrograde in its home sign of Aries at 28 degrees. And so this is kind of an odd place. Mars is in its power and its dignity, but not really, because it's going backwards. And so there's something about this that is really stopping this power, this dignity of Mars that wants to just go in and take action, take initiative. This is slowing things down and saying, well, let's take our time and really think this through, really process things, really take the time to get some help, to get some advice, to get some assistance from others, right? There might be some situations, because Mars, remember, is very individualistic, very much wants to take the lead in the initiative. But there's something about this Mars retrograde where you might run into some challenges, some difficulties, where you're going to need other people to assist and help and guide you along the way. You can't necessarily take this all on your own. But also with this, there's something to say about how you can't really force or push anything into motion, because it's slowing down this aggressiveness, this force, this action to push through. And so this is where you'll run into some stop signs, you'll run into some brick walls of trying to push and force things, where it's really asking you to be patient, to take your time, to really think things through. And so Mars is very weak here. It is, again, in its power and dignity, but it is moving backwards. So it's slowing that force down. But once we come out of this Mars retrograde, there is something to say about how it will be still in Aries, still in its power and dignity. So it's going to feel like getting out of this stuck situation with a ton of energy, a ton of drive to push yourself forward out of this stuck position. So this has a lot to do with patience and taking your time and allowing others to step in and assist you. Now on September 12th, Jupiter comes direct in Capricorn at 17. So now Jupiter's at 17 degrees, where it's starting to move forward, starting to get closer and closer to the point where it will move into Aquarius. And we are going to see that the end of 2020, Jupiter will be much happier in Aquarius, and it will have this conjunction with Saturn in Aquarius as well. So this is the build up to that. And we see Jupiter still in its shadow, its post shadow in Capricorn, sort of saying, okay, during this review period, did you check off all the boxes of, do I have my goals set? Do I have my plan? Do I have my vision of how I'm going to work and how I'm going to put the time and the effort to make these achievements unfold, to make the magic happen? And on September 29th, we see Ceres station retrograde in Aquarius. So we talked about in the beginning of this video on July 7th, where Chiron stationed retrograde in Pisces. Now it's moving back into Aquarius, where there is something to say about how now it's saying, okay, this is still magical, this is still spiritual, this is still divine, but there's something about moving out of this space of isolation and separation and moving more into a space of unity and into divine truth and this higher frequency connection that we're dealing with here in Aquarius. And so, is that you? Are you comfortable with doing that? Are you comfortable with moving out of this space? There's something about Pisces that is a little bit suppressed, a little bit sensitive, a little bit isolated, a little bit reserved. Are you willing to come out of that space and actually evolve and grow? Because there's something about, yes, we have this spiritual divine connection when we go into isolation, into seclusion, but is that where we're going to stay at? Are we going to stay in this space of comfort? And there's something about comfort that I've been really highlighting throughout 2019 about how comfort really does not help you grow and improve. And there is something about Pisces where we get very comfortable. Remember that Venus is exalted in Pisces. So there's something here. And with Jupiter and Neptune as the ruler of Pisces, there's something about this energy being so benefic that it wants to escape and go off into its own space of comfort and love and divinity. But remember that we have reality, that we have challenges, that we have these harsh difficulties to face, that we have to connect, and we have to come into this space of unity to grow. And so yes, you get your own space of nurturing and fulfilling yourself in this individual space of seclusion and going within, but now it's time to bring in other people on your same walk of life. And now it's time to have the conversation and the connection of, okay, how can we all work together to move into this space that is truly satisfying and nurturing and truly divine for all of the collective? This is, definitely highlighting some humanitarian work of really connecting and guiding others on their journey as well. Of how can we sort of nurture and guide others on their journey. And remember that with this energy, that there is something to say too about how you can only lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink. And so many people will hear your advice and your guidance, and there's something to say about not pushing people and about how they are on their individual journey. When they are ready to do the work, they will, but this is still a space of you providing your guidance, providing your assistance of how you can sort of direct these people in the right direction. And so there is something about that with 2020, about gathering people together. Remember, this is a number 4 year about the home and the security. And there's something about bringing people together as a soul family. Now, September 29th, Saturn stations direct in Capricorn at 25. So now Saturn is going to start to move forward, and remember that we're going to have this big Jupiter-Saturn conjunction towards the end of the year. Now, with Saturn coming out of this space, Saturn is already comfortable, already at home in Capricorn, but coming out of this retrograde, no longer are we sort of looking at the areas where we need to apply the work and to really climb that ladder to success. Now it's time to actually do it. And so a lot of people are going to come out of this space of intention and review and looking over these things and still not really putting any action or work into motion. And so this is the reminder of, okay, now it's time to actually do the physical work to get the results, to get the benefits, and to achieve your goals. Remember that Jupiter in Capricorn is challenging, but it is still a doorway, it's still an opportunity. It just requires some work, some discipline to really put the effort into this. October 3rd, we have Pluto making a quincunx to the North Node at 2020. And we saw Saturn make a quincunx over to the North Node, and we saw the effect of that, about how it really was about, okay, this is the work that needs to be done. This is the effort that needs to be put in to open up these doorways. Now we're looking at Pluto making this quincunx to the North Node. And remember that Pluto is in Capricorn, where it's transforming and breaking down these old systems. And so this is another reminder about how, okay, we need to continue to break down these structures and systems and beliefs and these old rules and ways of doing things to really open up these Gemini doorways of learning and of connecting and experiencing new and fresh information and experiences. Now, the next day on October 4th, Pluto comes direct in Capricorn at 22 degrees. So now Pluto is coming out of this period of breaking things down that are no longer of value to us, breaking down these old systems, things sort of going off the wire, things not really making sense or going the way that you planned, because it's really trying to break down these old systems and structures that we have sort of chained ourselves to. And as it comes direct, that intensity sort of dies down. It's still here to remind us, though, okay, this is how we transform, this is how we evolve, by going through this new system, this new structure. And this is what this is about. This Pluto direct in Capricorn is ultimately the phoenix of rising from the ashes, rising from these old situations, these old structures, these old systems, to step into new systems, new beliefs, new structures that are more of value to us, that are more fulfilling, more sustaining in our lives. On October 12th, we have a Jupiter sextile and Neptune at 18 degrees. And remember that Jupiter is still in Capricorn. So we saw this sextile earlier in 2020. This is definitely highlighting about how we need to put the work and the effort in order to step into this magical, beautiful destiny, this doorway of opportunity. Because remember that Neptune is in Pisces, and its home sign, where it is hopeful, where it is believing of the magic of the divine spiritual connection. But Jupiter is weak in Capricorn, where it has to go through vigorous work and go through really making the effort and the time and applying that to the work that needs to be done to get us to these big Jupiter doorways. So what is the work? What is the effort? What are you putting into this to get to that magic, to get to that destiny of those divine doorways and opportunities that are waiting for you? And this is big, as Jupiter is at 18 degrees of Capricorn. It is starting to speed up and move closer and closer and closer. Remember that Jupiter is a gas giant, so it can't whip through these signs quickly like Mercury can, right? This is a giant planet. But there's something about Jupiter starting to come out of post-shadow where it starts to speed up and it is moving through fast, and it is leading up to this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. Now on October 13th, we have our third Mercury retrograde of the year. It is in Scorpio at 11 degrees. So now we're sort of in the earlier degrees of Scorpio, so it will move back into Libra, where Mercury is a little bit more comfortable in Libra, so definitely not necessarily as intense as the Mercury retrograde that we had to go through, that we are finishing out this year in 2019, as Mercury sort of gets a break as it gets to move through Libra, where it's a little bit more comfortable. Now, we're still dealing with a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, however, so it is going to take us through the depths of our soul. It is going to take us to the deeper parts of our psyche and into the darkness and into these more hidden, more challenging, more difficult areas where we are going to have to face our fears, face the reality, face the truth, face the things that we're going to have to work on and deal with in our lives. So remember that if you have not yet done the shadow work, if you have not yet gone in to the deeper parts of yourself and done the healing and the true work to elevate your soul, this is going to be difficult. This is going to take you down into the depths of your own darkness, and this is where Mercury is going to report back to you all of these things that you're going to have to work on in this domain of Scorpio. Now, October 18th, Ceres comes direct in Aquarius, so we're sort of out of this place of questioning and reviewing and going over what is nurturing, what is fulfilling, what is abundant, what has substance to it, not only on an individual level, but also on a collective level of, okay, how can we also help guide and nurture others also on their journey? We come out of that, and now it's time to apply these things. So if you've taken the time to review, to go over these things, to really think about and understand what is truly nurturing and fulfilling, okay, now it's time to apply this to your life. And there is something to say about how this is taking us into this ultimate divine space. There's something big about 2020 that highlights Aquarius, about this high frequency, this higher dimension, this new, fresh space, this innovation, this rebellion of what no longer serves us, of what is old, and of what we've been attached to for the longest time now, that does not hold any value or serve us in any true way in our lives. So, on October 27th is when this Mercury retrograde officially moves into Libra, where we're going to feel like a weight has been lifted. The intensity goes way down as Mercury is more comfortable here in Libra, where Libra is going to be much more peaceful, much more diplomatic, much more relatable and understanding. But there is something here to say about how Libra is the ruler of relationships. And so if there's any issues involving relationships, that will come up with this Mercury retrograde. You will see issues involving communication in relationships, involving contracts, involving emotional contracts and attachments. You will see these issues come up if you have not resolved these areas in your relationships. This Mercury retrograde in Libra will be big on relationships, especially coming off of Scorpio, where we sort of went into the depths of the deeper parts of these relationships, which ultimately is the depths of your psyche, which ultimately is going into your own darkness. Remember that relationships are mirrors. They are reflections. And so any unresolved issues will be reflected in your partners. October 29th, Jupiter makes another quincunx with the North Node. Jupiter makes its first quincunx with the North Node. We saw Pluto make a quincunx to the North Node. We saw Saturn make a quincunx to the North Node. And there was something sort of odd, sort of off about this interaction between Capricorn and Gemini. They're a little bit off. They don't quite understand each other, right? It's an in conjunction, sort of this near miss of these energies of one wanting to be a little bit more light, a little bit more open and free and curious and accepting of new experiences and ideas, and the other one being a little bit more rigid, a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more focused about ambition and achieving goals. And so there's sort of this weird disconnect happening. And a quincunx is sort of this weird aspect, this weird sort of angle going on. And so there's something about this where, and we saw this with Saturn and Capricorn making the quincunx, but with Jupiter here, there's something about this energy where Jupiter expands whatever it touches, right? Jupiter is here to bring in opportunities, here to open doorways. And yes, it's in its fall sign of Capricorn where it's very weakened, but there's something about how it is expanding this Capricorn energy of, okay, we need to do the work, we need to have a routine, we need to focus, we need to have the ambition, we need to be willing to put in the time and the effort to make these achievements happen. And November 3rd, Mercury comes direct in Libra at 25 degrees. Okay, so now Mercury's happy. Mercury is stationed direct in a sign that is very comfortable with here in Libra. And so you see us communicating a little bit differently. There's going to be a little bit more of this relatable nature in the way that we communicate, right? We're going to be able to relate to others and see from their perspectives. Now, there is something to say, though, about how Mercury is still in post-shadow. It's still coming out of this retrograde. And it's in Libra of relationships. And so if there's any aftermath of sort of these scenarios that have not been resolved, we can still have these things come up in the aftermath of this, you'll still see sort of these challenges with relationships, of these things that need to be resolved. Remember that Libra is the balance scales, and so there has to be some kind of justice. There has to be some kind of conclusion that comes from these situations. And so we have to decide, are we going to work through this, find a solution? Are we going to leave this situation? Otherwise, if you were still holding on and nothing has been resolved, there's no conclusion, then you're still going to see some issues in the aftermath of this Mercury post shadow. November 12th, Jupiter finally catches up to Pluto. So we see Jupiter-Pluto conjunction at 22 degrees Capricorn. So now Jupiter is at 22 degrees of Capricorn, where it's starting to come to the end of Capricorn. We're only at 22 degrees, so we still have a little bit of way to go. But remember that the end of this thing is at 29, so we're closing in on this point where Jupiter will move into this beautiful space of Aquarius. And so there's something about this conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto where, and we saw this earlier in 2020, where, okay, Pluto is this tiny planet, so small that we really don't even refer to it as a planet, right? And yet it is the one who's actually in its power here in Capricorn. Jupiter is weakened. So this massive gas giant is weak here in Capricorn, and this little tiny dwarf planet that we call Pluto has its power in Capricorn. And so there's something about this energy of Jupiter conjunct Pluto that's very intense, very dark, very serious, of, okay, we need to take action, we need to take initiative in doing the work and putting the time and effort. And I know this is something that I've said a lot. Remember that this theme is coming up because this is a 22 year of, okay, we need to build and work and put the time and the effort to make our destiny fulfilled. Right? This is not something that is just handed to us. There is effort, there is work that needs to be done to make these beautiful opportunities happen. And the next day, Mars stations direct in Aries. So this is where you'll feel this burst of energy of really wanting to get things done, of really wanting to take the initiative. You're going to feel this push, and you're going to feel really good because now Mars is moving forward in its home sign where it's ready to go. It's ready to take action, to take the initiative, to get things done. Right? This Mars and Aries energy is an action-oriented energy. So now, okay, what action are you going to take in your life? And there's a lot that you can do because there's a lot of lessons and a lot of things the universe is telling you that needs to be done. And so that's really where your focus should be, right? We shouldn't get distracted. You can get kind of distracted with this Mars and Aries of, remember that Aries has this energy, this enthusiasm, this excitement. So are we getting a little too excited about other things that aren't quite as important, these sort of distractions around us? And so you really want to use that Aries cardinal activation energy of focusing on what it is that you want to accomplish. Utilize this Mars and Aries energy to take action and to take initiative and to really make things happen in your life versus wasting it in these little distractions around you. And remember that this Mars direct in Aries at 15 degrees is in Scorpio season, where, okay, in Scorpio season, we're trying to emotionally fulfill ourselves. Remember that the moon is at fall in Scorpio. So there's something about how emotions are heightened to the most intense possible level in Scorpio, of this instinct and of these animalistic nature of, okay, how can I emotionally fulfill myself? What am I emotionally attaching myself to? So again, that is another reason why we want to be careful about, okay, where are we going to put all of this Aries passion and drive into and focus it into? Because we don't want to attach to things that don't emotionally fulfill us. There's something about Scorpio where we're dealing with this root chakra energy of, again, attaching ourselves to things that fulfill us passionately and intensely, that feel good, that seem good, but is it really good? Are we doing things that are little quick hits of excitement and intensity, or are we doing things that really emotionally fulfill us on a true, intensely passionate level that is truly sustainable in the long run? On November 28th, Neptune stations direct in Pisces at 18 degrees. So remember that we're still at 18, so Neptune is not coming out of Pisces anytime soon, right? We see this Neptune in Pisces that is throughout the whole 2020. And with this, there's really not a whole lot going on. We're very used to this Neptune Pisces energy that we've experienced throughout 2019. Now, it is important to keep in mind that the aspects are different. But with this Neptune and Pisces, we're sort of coming out of this space of confusion, of illusion, of what is really real, and questioning what is truly divine. And now we know, right? We know in Neptune and Pisces what is truly magical and divine and spiritual and has the highest, most divine connection. So now we know where our hope and our optimism of this spiritual doorway is at. But again, there's something about this where, with all this Capricorn activity and all of this seriousness of needing to build your destiny and where you are going, that we're kind of in this space of, okay, yes, you have the magic, but you also have to do the work to get it. Now, on November 30th, we have our fourth full moon prenumbral lunar eclipse. This time it is in Gemini at 8 degrees. So now it's starting to come into contact with this North Node in Gemini of this beautiful destined space. Right now we are in this full moon that wants to release these old experiences in Gemini. This is a huge release point of old experiences, of old lessons, and now we're coming into this new space, and this is a destined space of what are the new, fresh, exciting things that you are open to receiving in your life. And this is a theme all year with this North Node in Gemini of, okay, what are these new doorways that we're open to? What are these new things that we're curious about, that we're willing to take on? This new information, this new connection, these new experiences. And now with this prenumbral lunar eclipse, remember this is not a partial lunar eclipse, this is a prenumbral. And so there's something truly magical about this, of these big opportunities and these big doorways that we've been waiting for, that are pouring in this moment. And it really is leading up to a magical moment, because remember that we are getting close to this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. And so there is something about the end of 2020 that is really opening up these really magical experiences. Again, it feels a lot like moving into a higher dimension, a higher frequency. So this is huge. Now, on December 14th, we have a new moon total solar eclipse in Sagittarius at 23 degrees. And so this is not your annual solar eclipse. This is a total solar eclipse. This is huge. And there is something about 2020 that is huge, right? 2019 was showing us what's possible, what the opportunities that we could have. And now there's something about 2020 that is saying, okay, well, now you have it. So what are you going to do? What's the work that you're going to apply, the effort that you're going to put into it to take it on? So 2020 is like a ship. Are you going to get on the ship and go or not? Right? So in 2020, there's no more of this sort of hesitation and going back on decisions. Now it is really a point in time where you have to decide. And really 2019 right now is the time where you want to decide this, right? Because in 2020, that's where the work is. And you don't necessarily want the work to be challenging and difficult, more challenging and difficult than it needs to be, right? You want a challenge that actually sets you up for success. And so there's something about making this decision to go with this, to go towards this home base of 2020 that definitely sets you up for achievement. However, if you're trying to go back into these old behaviors, these old systems, these old ways of doing things, that is sort of where you get stuck and things start to become more challenging than they need to be, right? All of these things starting to pile up and really become super difficult in your life. On December 15th, Chiron comes direct in Aries at 4 degrees. And so now we're no longer in this place of sort of this destruction of the ego. Now we really know, okay, this is what is ego and this is what is authentic. So now it is time to move into what is authentic, and anything that during that review period that you saw that was attached to ego, release that, let that go. And December 17th is a big moment where Saturn enters Aquarius once again, and it will stay here for the end of 2020. So this is where Saturn will stay, here in Aquarius. It's official at 0 degrees Aquarius. And I talked about in the first part about how this Saturn in Aquarius is something truly divine, something truly magical about moving into this new space of these new parameters, these new boundaries, these new systems of evolution of this new higher frequency, this new divine space in Aquarius. And there's something about that that is connected to the age of Aquarius, again, about this information age, about this futuristic age of this new space of what is truly divine and what is truly in sync with who we are. So we are elevating. We're going to a completely different new space in our lives. And on December 19th, Jupiter finally makes its way into Aquarius. So now we have Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius, which will lead up to a conjunction on December 21st. So there's something about this winter solstice energy that is aligned with this beautiful Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. And this is truly magical. It's no longer in Capricorn where things are a little bit more strict, a little bit more serious. Now we're moving into this Aquarian space of this high frequency energy and of the collective and of this evolution, this revolution of moving to this new innovative, this new divine spiritual space. There's something truly magical about the opportunities that this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is opening up to us. And yes, with Saturn here, it's saying, yes, you need to do the work, you need to commit, you need to put the time and the effort in. But now, this is a little less mundane. This is in Aquarius where it's saying, okay, we need to move into this higher space of what elevates us and what innovates us and what takes us and skyrockets us into this spiritual divinity. And so this is a major doorway, a major gateway, a major opportunity to take on in your life here with this Jupiter conjunction in Saturn. And we close out the eclipse season on December 29th with a full moon in Cancer, of this release point of these old feelings and these old attachments. Again, remember that earlier we talked about how a lot of you will feel sensitive, a lot of you will feel vulnerable, emotional to the things happening around you. And so now this is kind of the release point of that energy that's saying, okay, now, but we have these new connections with this Jupiter-Saturn thing of what is emotionally fulfilling, of what we're going to put our emotions in, what we're going to attune ourselves to, what we're sensitive and what we're open to. And what is home? There's something about this full moon in Cancer that is the completion, the culmination of what you have decided on as your home connection, of your home base, of what is home to the heart of this divine spiritual connection. So that is your 2020 horoscope. There are other things again happening, other transits, other aspects going on in 2020. This was just highlighting the major transits. We will talk about some other transits later on. But thank you so much for joining in and watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. If you are new to this channel, you've never subscribed, never been on this channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as well as the little notification bell next to it so that you don't miss out on any new content. Feel free to share your Mercury retrograde experiences as we are closing out this Mercury retrograde. And also feel free to comment what you are excited about moving into this 2020 new year and new decade. 2020 is a new decade, so there's something about that, moving into this new decade of this amazing, beautiful spiritual space. Again, it's going to be a year of a lot of hard work, a lot of challenges, but it does lead up to this beautiful Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that elevates us and takes us to a new space. So go ahead and leave the transit that you are the most excited about in 2020. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.